Hi, my name is Sage, and this week, I decided I wanted to make a fun guy, get it? So he's a fungus man, and he's really happy, and he's wearing a party hat. And obviously he has to wear some jorts too. And to get started, I'm going to need some tinfoil, clay, a wooden base, and some wire. And first things first is I make his torso by scrunching up some tinfoil, before then taking some more and scrunching that up, as this will be the meat of the mushroom top. And how I do that is I take some more tinfoil and wrap it around the small ball that I made, and I flare it out so it becomes more of a mushroom shape, and then I continue to do that until it gets to be the size that I think would be a good head shape for him. Next, I take a rectangular piece of tinfoil and wrap it around the top of his torso, and then twirl those pieces in my fingers so they become a ball, as this will be the beginning of his shoulders. And once that's done, I then add some more tinfoil to the bottom of him so that I'm building up more of his body and his legs. And his legs are going to be together, so I don't need to do anything crazy for that. And now that he's looking like a little fun guy, I then cover him in clay. So now I take my ball stylus and start rolling it up top of his head to give him some texture, while also giving him some little waves all around his head, because I just think that's really cute on a mushroom and he's a fun guy. So everything just worked out in my brain. And this is where I use a smaller ball stylus and create some grooves going up to his neck to give him some more mushroom texture. And I continue these grooves going all the way up until it hits the little waves that I have on his head. Next, I decide I'm going to work on his arms, and I do that by cutting some wires, so I eyeball the measurements because I don't do any math on this channel. And I cut 2 of them before putting them into his shoulders, and now he kind of looks a little funky, but now I'm going to cover them in tin foil because I've learned the hard way. When you put clay up top of wire, it just slides right off. That's why the tinfoil is so necessary. I then cover the other arm in tinfoil as well, and now I'm gonna cover them in clay, and I figured out that it's easier to cover them in clay by removing them from the body, as you can see. So once I smush and roll the clay all over the arm, I then decide to put it back onto the body, and I also use some more clay to adhere it by putting it on its shoulder and just kind of smushing it all together. I then repeat this entire process on the other side as well. So now that he has 2 arms, it's time to give him 2 hands. And I do that by giving him 2 rectangular pieces of clay on the ends of his arms, and I also give him a thumbs up because obviously he's having a great time. And because I didn't feel like working on the 2 hands in that moment, I decided I'm gonna give him 2 eyes instead. And I do that by taking 2 small clay lumps, smushing them in my hands, and then using the ball stylus and blending them into his head. And so now that he can see, I then work on his hands by putting them in the finger gun position. And then I decide, you know what, I don't feel like doing that anymore. I'm going to work on his jorts. And I do that by taking a piece of clay that I've made really thin, putting them around his waist, before then taking my pointy stylus and cutting them into a short shape. I don't know how else to describe it. This is also my first time ever making clay clothes, so bear with me. And I do some detailing by giving him like a waistband and giving him the implications that he has 2 separate legs, and obviously he's gonna get some pockets, ooh. I then continue making the shorts on the back as well, and I blend them all together before then taking a small piece of jean, but it's an iron-on jean, so it doesn't have the exact texture that I'm going for, but I pressed that into the jorts because I want it to have some texture. Didn't really work, wouldn't recommend doing that. It's probably because it's not a real piece of jeans, but whatever. And now I'm gonna work on giving him his tank top, and I decide I'm gonna do the shoulder parts first. So I take a little piece of clay and flatten it out, put it across his shoulders, before then taking a bigger piece of clay that's also flattened out to make the shirt part. And I do that on both sides, before then going in with my pointy stylus and cutting off any extra, and then I also use my ball stylus to smooth everything out. The sides of the shirt also need a little extra love as well, well, just to make sure everything connects. So once the extra clay is there, I then continue on the smoothing process, before then moving on to his hands. And for his hand, at least on this side, I end up making it completely backwards, because that's just how it worked in my head. So I do end up making another hand off screen, and I happened to notice just before I put him into the oven that this hand was backwards. So what I'm saying is just always double check your work. But after that debacle, I end up moving on to making his skin texture, and his skin texture is obviously mushroom based. So I go in and make a bunch of grooves all up and down his arms, his legs, and his neck. But then I felt like working on his jorts again, so I gave him a fly, and then I gave him a pocket within a pocket. I believe it's like the pocket watch pocket. At least that's what they were for back in the day, if I remember my gene history correctly. And then I give him some back pockets, because obviously pockets are important to me, because I'm a girl and they don't like to give us pockets for whatever reason. I know the conspiracy theory is that they want to sell more purses, so they give us less pockets, but it makes me upset, so he's getting all the pockets. And here I decided I wanted to make some little mushrooms to go up top of him as well. So I take a little piece of clay and then roll it around in my fingers before then squishing another piece of clay that's really thin and then kind of just blending them together to make a mushroom shape. And then I make some more. And so now that I have 6 mini mushrooms, I then begin the blending process. So to do that, I just take my mini ball stylus and just begin blending the stump of the mini mushrooms onto him. And I just do that with every mushroom. And once they're all blended and good to go, I then decide it's time for party hat time. And so I take some tin foil and make it into a cone shape before then wrapping some clay over top of it to make the party hat. And now that it's a cone shape, I then decide, you know what's even more festive? Putting a bunch of sprigs up top of it. Because what's more fun than sprigs? So I take little pieces of clay and then roll them up in my hands and then just attach them using the ball stylus to make sure everything is nice and adhered, and hopefully nothing goes wrong in the future. And this is him before I put him into the oven. He's looking all great and wonderful, and this is him after. And as you can see, I changed his fingers around so they are the proper way. And now I can begin painting, yay! So I start by painting his little feet. I paint them brown first before then going in with some orange and then blending it out, and I make it darker on the bottom and lighter on the top. And I continue this process all the way around his little feet because I just think it looks nice, and I thought that orange and brown are a nice color combo. And then for the bottom of his neck and the tops of his shoulders, I do the exact same method. So I go in with brown first, and then I go in with orange and continue to blend everything out. And I do get heavily distracted on his neck and underneath the mushroom part, so I do end up just painting that with orange as well because I just thought it looked nice. I then go back to his arms and continue to blend out the brown and the orange. And I do that to about his elbow before then mixing the orange and yellow off screen and then painting the elbow to the fingers, a yellow and orange combo. And I do that on both arms. And once that's done, I then move to the top of his head and I start by using a white and yellow combo before then going in with the orange color and mixing the orange and yellow together. And I go around his entire head doing that until I get to the middle again, and then I start to blend that out with the darker orangey yellow color that I already put down. I then color in his eyes the same color as the top of his head as well, just to make everything nice and coherent. And now, since everything's all blended out, I then go around with the brown that I used before and just touch up the edges so they're just a bit darker than everything else. And then I decided I wanted the top of his head just to be a little bit lighter, so I added a little bit more white while it was still a bit damp, just so everything can blend all together, and then I was happy. The next thing I decided to work on is his shirt, and I decided to go with a completely black color because I just like black clothing and it makes sense in my brain. And since I already had the black out, I decided I'm also going to paint his eyeballs as well and then let them dry so then I can paint over them after. Next, it's jort time. time, so I paint his jorts blue, because obviously blue is the color of jorts. After that, I decide I'm gonna paint his mushrooms, and I decided to go with the classic red-capped mushroom look. I just like them, and they're fun, and they match the aesthetic that I'm going for, so it ended up all being great. And for the stems, I decided to go with a pale yellow color, and then also mix in some sepia. The sepia isn't really too seeable, but I still mixed it in there, and I wanted to mention it. This is where I put glistening into his eyes, and then I decided I hated it because it just didn't look right. It looked right in my head, but not like in real life, you know? And so I painted over what I already did and decided to try again. And I just gave him 2 dots instead of having extra stuff going on. And I used the end of my paintbrush to give him the 2 dots as well, in case you're wondering, being like, what was that? It was just the end of my paintbrush. And this is where I do random touch-ups, so I make some stuff a little bit lighter and a little bit darker to my liking. After that, I decide to use my Posca, and this is my first time ever using Posca on clay, and I decided to use my Posca because it is a point pen, because it's, if you don't know what it is, it's basically a pen with paint in it. It's really cool, and not sponsored, by the way. And I write Fun Guy on the back of his t-shirt. I was originally going to put it on the front, but his arms were kind of blocking it. So I decided, you know what? It can be a fun backwards graphic instead. And now it's party hat time. And I decided to go with a red hat because, you know, he's just a warm guy. And then I decide, you know what makes everything even more festive? Gold, so then I give his little sprigs some gold as well. I also put some gold designs all over his hat as well, but since the gold is so see-through, I do have to go over it a couple times. But once I do, everything is nice and shiny. I then put his hat up top of his head and it falls off, and then I'm searching for about a half an hour on the floor because the sprigs just all fell off. It's fine though, everything's good now. Next, I paint the wooden base. And I paint it brown, and I also paint the sides gold because I had a little extra gold left over. And since I wanted to add some moss, I put a bunch of Elmer's glue on the base and then just add the moss on top of it. And I just continue to add moss until it looks mossy enough for me. And this is the hat, and as you can see, some sprigs are missing, but Gorilla Glue comes in clutch. Not sponsored. And now it's time to add the straps to the hat, and I have fishing wire that I bought for another project a long time ago. And I'm gonna use that to make the straps for the party hat. And once I cut the length to where it's supposed to be, I then cut it again so then I can make a little knot so it feels more genuine. After that, I then use Gorilla Glue on both sides, so then the straps are now adhered, and that's pretty much it. I would just like to say thank you so much for watching, and now it's time for the glamour shots.